The halftime shows rival superstar concerts. It's the only time of the year when people don't want to miss the commercials. The betting market alone is worth $1.3 billion. It's one of the most profitable events on earth, the Super Bowl. Each year, a different city plays host. That comes with big responsibilities: a stadium, transport, health and safety. But the rewards on offer can be even bigger. With tens of thousands of fans coming in from all around the country, the NFL estimates that hosting a Super Bowl can bring a city an extra $400 million of spending.
This is so exciting. This is an opportunity for Atlanta to be seen by the entire world. We're looking at numbers upwards of $400 million in terms of economic impact.
We'll put on a really good show. We've hosted already 10. This is going to be our 11th Super Bowl. The winners are going to be the people of Miami-Dade County, of this community, because of all the economic impact that this game brings to our community.
But now cities are starting to turn away from hosting. It has to do with the NFL's crazy demands exposed in a secret document leaked to the press. The truth about how those hundreds of millions are generated and who they go to. In fact, experts believe the NFL has been lying the entire time. They say hosting a Super Bowl can actually end up losing money for cities. And some have learned the hard way. Today, we dive into the business behind the scenes of the Super Bowl and see why nobody wants to host the greatest sporting event in America anymore. First, we have to understand why the Super Bowl is such a big deal and why cities are lured into risking hundreds of millions in taxpayer money. If you're American, you might have wondered why some brands call the Super Bowl the big game. It's a way of avoiding the NFL trademark, which is forbidden no matter who you are. Back in 2007, a small church was threatened with legal action after it advertised a Super Bowl watch party. The event was charging $3 a head. The NFL is ruthless because the brand value is enormous. Look up the most watched TV program in America for any year, and it's not Friends, Seinfeld, The Simpsons, or The Kardashians. They are all blown out of the water by the Super Bowl. In fact, out of the top 20 most watched TV programs in history, 19 of them were Super Bowls. For the highly anticipated final episode of Friends, just over 52 million Americans tuned in. That same year, 89 million watched the Super Bowl. And last year, that number was 120 million. All that attention equals money. Every second of airtime during the Super Bowl costs a fortune. For just 90 seconds, an advertiser has to fork out a whopping $30 million. And celebrities are paid tens of millions just to make a split-second appearance. In 2020, Fox, the broadcaster of the Super Bowl, raked in over $450 million from these direct advertisements alone. Then, there's another big money maker, those lucky enough to get a seat inside the stadium. To get in the door, you either have to have powerful connections or plenty of money to burn. Tickets are notoriously hard to get a hold of. That's because of the way they are allocated. 17.5% of the tickets are given to the two teams competing, plus 1.5% to the other 30 NFL teams, and 5% to the team whose stadium is being used. For those counting, all up, that makes 85%. The rest are distributed to VIPs, sponsors, media, and whoever else is in the NFL's good books. By the time a ticket does make it onto what's called the secondary market, the price has skyrocketed. Last year, these secondary market tickets averaged twice their purchase price, meaning around $10,000. That average has been climbing rapidly. Last year's price was more than 10 times the price of a ticket back in 2003. And for this year, tickets purchased directly range from $7,450 all the way up to $35,000. For a stadium that can seat 75,000 people, that already translates to at least $500 million changing hands. Where does all that money go? We'll get to that later. For the hosting city, tens of thousands of fans arrive. These fans are attractive to local governments of cities struggling for money. The NFL promotes the Super Bowl as a huge economic generator for cities. A research institute funded by the NFL estimated that taxable sales for the 1999 Super Bowl increased by around $400 million. Another estimate by the Carey MBA Sports Business Program put the figure even higher for the 2014 Super Bowl in Phoenix, $720 million. The NFL's VP for special events has said that there is irrefutable evidence that a Super Bowl is the most dramatic event in the United States. Super Bowl patrons are significantly more affluent, spend more, and have more spent on them. and influence future business in the community more than attendees of any other event or convention held in the U.S. Some benefits include the increase in land value and businesses moving to the city. And with the large majority of American cities in dire need of funding, these numbers are pretty compelling. In fact, even the mayor of London has tried to drum up the British capital hosting the event. However, these benefits don't come cheap. Cities often have to commit to funding massive infrastructure projects. The AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas, which hosted the 2011 Super Bowl, had a budget of $650 million. $325 million of that was paid by taxpayers. The U.S. Bank Stadium in Minnesota, which hosted the 2018 Super Bowl, cost $1 billion. Again, half of that was funded by the public. And out of the $720 million it cost to build the Lucas Oil Stadium in Indianapolis, $635 million of that was raised by taking on public debt. That's almost 90% of the cost. The upshot is that these stadiums can be used for other purposes like concerts, conventions, and other sports like basketball or soccer. But the biggest winner is clearly the NFL. With a bigger, newer stadium, the resident team is better equipped to participate in big events and draw bigger crowds, all of which makes for greater revenue for the NFL. The league is basically getting a city to build them an entire stadium for free. And at the end of the day, most of the cost is generally paid for by taxpayers. Then there are the hidden costs. Just like the terms and conditions of a contract, none of these are advertised up front. The NFL has a long list of demands for any city wanting to host the country's premier sporting event. They include booking out hotels, convention centers, even golf courses, and bowling alleys for functions, all paid for on the city's dime. These demands were revealed to the public when a 154-page document was leaked to the Minnesota Star-Tribune. Other demands included portable cell phone towers, NFL-preferred ATM machines, billboards, police escorts, and 35,000 parking spaces. Then there are extra costs like transportation, security, crowd management, and public services like sanitation. The NFL isn't responsible for any of that. Oh, and if you thought the city would make their money back on ticket sales, wrong. 100% of those go straight into the NFL's pockets. So, is hosting the Super Bowl really worth it? One city in Arizona found out that the Super Bowl can cripple the local economy. A city of just 250,000 people, Glendale, Arizona, it's dwarfed by Phoenix, 2 hours away and 6 times the size. But it was here that the 2008, 2015, and 2023 Super Bowls were hosted. To prepare for hosting its first ever Super Bowl, farmland was slowly transformed into a brand new $450 million NFL stadium. The University of Phoenix Stadium, which was planned to be paid for with levies on surrounding businesses like car rental shops and hotels. On the face of it, the new stadium was an exciting prospect. The Arizona Cardinals had a brand new home venue, and infrastructure around the city was improved. According to research, new stadiums can cause a minor boom in employment at restaurants and bars, but that's basically where the positive effects end. Of 10 different stadiums in 10 different American cities found no significant effects on the surrounding areas at all. It's no wonder officials in Glendale had lost faith before the Super Bowl even went through. Mayor Jerry Wires said, "I totally believe we will lose money on this, a couple $1 million. If one is perfect, as things could be in 10 was bankruptcy, I'd say we were a strong 8. He was right." The city reported a $1.6 million loss for the 2008 Super Bowl and around $2 million for 2015. To come up with the money for all the new facilities, the city had signed checks it couldn't cash. Eventually, when none of the profits they hoped for materialized, Glendale was forced to slash a quarter of its district's employees, cut down public services, and then add a sales tax over 9% for locals. Plus, the city was footing the bill for more police and ensuring public safety. To make things worse, the majority of the Super Bowl fans actually stayed in Phoenix instead of Glendale. The power of Phoenix might be the reason that Glendale hosted the Super Bowl again in 2023. Even the mayor admitted that it was a statewide effort. For small cities that aren't connected to big capitals, the benefits aren't so clear. One critic saw Glendale's experience as a warning to other cities. Overall, it's a bad move for cities. As much as they say it's going to make the city a destination, it just doesn't. And according to the data, he was right. The deeper you dig past the NFL's figures, the worse it gets. After weighing up all the evidence, there's only one reason to host a Super Bowl, and it's not to make money. Remember that $400 million the NFL estimated for hosting a Super Bowl? Turns out it's a pretty controversial figure. One economist who has spent decades studying the economics of sports, Robert Berri, has a simple rule. He takes the NFL's estimate and moves the decimal point one place to the left. If the NFL says 400 million, it's more likely somewhere around 40 million. And even that might be being generous. It all comes down to how these complicated numbers are tallied together. So let's break them down. The NFL's figures often include the total economic activity of fans flocking to the city. They purposely don't take into account the fact that most facilities like hotels would usually be pretty full anyway, especially in highly touristic locations like Miami. In fact, in some cases, economists argue that the Super Bowl can have a negative effect. People who usually visit an area's restaurants, bars, and other businesses might skip the traffic jams and huge crowds and go somewhere else instead. Workers might prefer to stay home instead of waiting in traffic, meaning they don't buy that sandwich for lunch from a local cafe. This is known as the crowding out effect. There's also something called leakage. Workers come in from out of town for higher wages, but they aren't part of the local economy. When they leave, they take most of their money with them. This kind of leakage also happens with businesses. Food trucks, vendors, and other mobile businesses come to town to sell to Super Bowl fans. It even happens with hotels. For the 2014 Super Bowl in New Jersey, a hotel floated into town. A 1,000-foot Norwegian cruise liner ship docked on the Hudson River to provide rooms for 4,000 people. But it revealed another problem with the Super Bowl. The cruise company is based in Miami, Florida. That meant that as soon as the Super Bowl had finished, the Norwegian cruise liner pulled anchor and set sail again, taking their profits far away from the hosting city. It's the same for any national company that Super Bowl attendees buy from. This is one of the reasons it's difficult to separate Super Bowl spending from everything else going on, or to figure out if people are actually spending more than they usually would. Ultimately, it's about how the locals have been affected. So, first of all, are they left better or worse off? In terms of income, before and after a Super Bowl, researchers have looked at data between 1969 and 1997. They found there was no beneficial effect on the local economy. And they went even further, claiming that basically all professional sports have a detrimental effect on local economies. In other words, sport is not a moneymaker. And the Super Bowl doesn't have any effect on the income of residents. What about local businesses, though? Economists have used sales tax revenue to try and isolate the effects of the small Super Bowl window. When it was hosted in Houston, one study found a bump of around $5 million in sales tax revenue, while Texas saw a $3.92 million increase. While this is a positive impact, does it really outweigh the huge costs for city governments? There's much more money to be made in accommodation. Hotel occupancy increases can add up to around $39 million. But this is easily the biggest spending that a visiting fan does for a Super Bowl apart from the ticket. All of this lines up with a study that looked at 25 different Super Bowls and found that the average economic impact was about $30 million. That's still a long way off from the NFL's $400 million estimate. So, if the numbers don't support hosting a Super Bowl, who exactly is pushing the idea so hard? It isn't just the NFL. Government officials in cities often spend plenty of time promoting the potential benefits of bringing the big game to town. Like when leaders in New York and New Jersey claimed that as many as 400,000 fans would come to the area. But with only 120,000 hotel rooms being available and an 83,000 seat capacity at the stadium, it was an impossible promise. One argument often used is that a Super Bowl puts a city on the map. But a Super Bowl trip isn't really an advertisement for the city. It's an advertisement for one thing, the Super Bowl experience. It's not like normal tourism that can help make the city a more popular destination. Fans coming away from the event are much more likely to talk about the game than they are about the city. In a survey, less than 1 in 4 people were able to remember where the previous year's Super Bowl was hosted. From the data, there is only one conclusion. The Super Bowl is nowhere near as valuable for cities as the NFL claims. And at worst, it can put the city deep into debt while it pays off the huge costs. In the end, the only clear reason for a city to host a Super Bowl is not related to money at all. It's about prestige and status. It won't put a city on the map, but it will add a jewel to the crown of a city. Miami, Florida, for example, has become an NFL staple. It has hosted the Super Bowl a record 11 times. But the city already generates over $500 billion a year, making it the 12th highest in America. The infrastructure is set up for entertainment and sporting events. For small cities thinking about betting on the Super Bowl to transform their economy, the odds are stacked against them. Chances are they will end up losing money. The only guaranteed winner is the NFL.